I've lost my train of thought.
That's right, edit it out, mate. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Me. I was on one as well. It was great.
I do love a podcast with some dead air in it.
And welcome to the Mediocre Photography Show. My name's Ben.
And my name's Jack.
And my name's Matt.
And today we've got another special guest on, second special guest of the series, which is Mr. Matt Round. And we're going to be talking about how we can make some money from photography. The reason that we invited Matt is because he's literally the only professional photographer I know.
And in the world, in fact.
In the world, yeah, absolutely. Pretty bottom of the barrel stuff here, to be honest. So,
that's a fair comment.
yeah, just insult all your guests, Ben. I'm sure that more people will want to come on after this. Mm-hmm. So, before we start, how's everyone been? Obviously, Matt being a self-employed photographer during a global pandemic. Been up to much photography or been doing other things?
No. Building a guitar.
Building a guitar.
Which is, obviously very in keeping with photography.
Absolutely.
In fact, the two, woodwork and photography, go hand in hand. And I think this is a skill that people within the photography sphere don't truly appreciate.
Absolutely. And, of course, the next thing will be to make a camera completely out of wood.
My name is not Brendan, all right?
Oh, yeah. But yeah, no, awesome. What about you, Jack? How have you been?
Yeah. I've been alright. As per. I can't get the lid on my bottle. I've been alright.
This is high quality podcasting content right here, isn't it?
Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks. I'm very grateful
I've been alright.
to be.
It's just been work still. It's still super busy at work, and that's literally it. I've had no time to take any photos, so nothing on the photography front. I'm not building a guitar, not planning to, but no, not much.
That's great. Well, I got off work. I only had a half day today, and so I spent the bank holiday Monday in the art garden reading, which has been quite nice. Did develop some film the other day, which was quite good. Realised that my chemistry was out, but we'll see the results of that in just a second. So yeah, so the kind of thing for today is that we're going to do our photo conversation, and then we're going to ask Matt some questions and try to get a little bit of an idea for all of those young and budding photographers out there, how you can transition from some unpaid work into making some dosh.
I'm not sure I'm the correct role model for this.
Well, Matt,
the closest thing we've got.
The closest thing we've got.
Wow, what does that say about you guys?
Yeah.
Mediocre.
Mediocre indeed. Sweet. So, Jack, would you like to go first?
No, because I went first last time and it screwed me over.
Great. All right. So this is the photo conversation. The word was sanctuary, which I'm sure that everybody who watched last week's episode remember that I wasn't a massive fan of, to say the least. I thought that it's probably going to be a word that's going to be quite unoriginal to work with, and so I decided to defy all expectations and do the most unoriginal thing possible. So this is my sanctuary, and to describe the photo, it's a image that I took at a local nature reserve where somebody had built a little den out of woods, as they do. So yeah, as lockdown's slowly being lifted and the weather's turning out better, I decided to try and get out more. My schedule only means that I can really get out in the evenings at the moment, but I think that kind of works quite well because you get a little bit more of like the dappled light, the golden hour. It's a little bit more directional and detailed. And I've decided that for what I want to work with for the foreseeable future, now that I can go outside a little bit more, is the desire to be simple. and to go back to my roots of photography almost, and what I very much enjoyed doing to begin with. And so that's sort of the idea that I had for this photo was, let's just go out and do what I do best, which is walk and see what I come across. And I think that the wood den is very much my desire to be in nature. And for me, my sanctuary is going out alone and just walking and trying to find something from that. And that is sort of where I find peace in the world, and how I can make sense of things. It's my meditation and my therapy almost. So that is the image. I would like to point out that this is actually shot on film. This is shot on Ektar, which I developed the other day. But my chemistry was bad, so that's why it's looking a little bit contrasty and a little bit dark. So my apologies for that. I do have some more chemistry on the way, so we can go from there. But yeah, that is the photo conversation.
Do you know what's really annoying? It's very Dan Wood. And
Yeah,
as you know, Dan Wood is one of my favourite photographers ever, and it's a very good photo. And I'm pissed, honestly. I'm absolutely pissed.
The rest of the honestly, Jack, the rest of the role was
best of a bad bunch. No, it's good. I don't think the chemistry is worsened the image at all. I think it's actually made it better.
It's definitely given it almost a bleach bypass look, hasn't it? I actually. So, a bit of a story behind this was the last time that I actually used this chemistry, and for anybody who's ever processed C41 is going to shoot me for this, was actually back in, I think, January. And the chemicals froze in my garage. And so I think that's probably shortened their lifespan again. But the images that I got from that as well were very, very much like bleach bypass, like really harsh highlights but not a huge amount of saturation. And I do very much like the look, and I was thinking about experimenting with it a little bit more, but the problem is that it's so unpredictable that, you know, it's literally from roll to roll you're having to alter your times in order to get a consistent kind of effect. And I just thought, I looked into it, I did a bit of research, and I just thought I just can't be asked to work with it. So yeah, unfortunately the chemistry has been binned and gone from there. I did actually have a similar issue with E6 chemistry as well, but I've just thought, you know, I can't be dealing with it, so it's all chucked. It's been about 5 months since I've completely made new batches of all my chemistry, so that's gonna be what I end up doing. But yeah, so that's my sanctuary.
Nice. And you came up with the wood den just now?
Oh no! I had as soon as I saw it. I didn't actually go out on that shoot with the intention of taking photos for sanctuary. Yeah. As soon as I saw the wood den, I was like, oh, okay, this is nice.
It's a good name. Good name for a project there.
Yeah, the wood den.
The wood, yeah. Anyway,
maybe
you ready for mine? I obviously first thing I did was Google it, and like you, I sort of thought about what my sanctuary was and sort of where I like to go when I'm stressed out and anxious, and I couldn't really think of a location as such. So I sort of thought what I like to do is just obviously disappear in thought and stuff like that. You see me on the podcast zoning out every now and then because I'm genuinely thinking about something else. But then I thought, well, do I really like my head? Is my head really a sanctuary for me? And so I decided I went on a loop of where I take the dog, and I had like nice flowers, and it's very cliche. And again, you said A-level, but this is my sanctuary. I think it's congratulations, Jack. It's another black and white self-portrait. And but yeah, it's a bit anti-sanctuary, if you know what I mean. But yeah, so I went out. I was going to go and I had a picture in my head where I was going to go lay down on a road, but I thought maybe that is a bit too much, considering it was a road that was being used. And so I was walking back home and I saw these flowers and I thought it's a little juxtaposition of of subject there. And the annoying thing is obviously because it's a black and white self-portrait of a guy, I've had to be topless. It's just the law. And so I took off my top and I didn't realise that someone was running just on the track in front of me, and so I was on my knee. Oh God. I was just on my knees, like getting into this bush, and this like flowery bush, and this girl ran past me and said the sweetest hi to me, and I just knelt there, just didn't say a word back. So to that
you know what you should have said, Jack? It's for TikTok.
It's art. Do you not understand? No, so to that girl I apologise greatly. You had the pleasure of seeing my nipples, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's another Jack Henderson special, isn't it? I do like the idea that, you know, we're always sort of told, oh, the sanctuary is, you should have sort of inner peace and stuff like that, and it's quite a good visualization of how that's not always the case. So yeah, and I think the juxtaposition works very well. Again, I like the graininess of it.
Yeah, I've started like upping the graininess. Obviously, you said last week that you didn't really notice, or not last week. The last time I did it, I think it was for the Spectrum one. You said you didn't really notice, so I just like whacked it up fully, and I sort of liked the end result.
Yeah, absolutely, it's great, awesome. So, Matthew Round, do tell me how you got into photography. I know that it wasn't your first career, shall we say?
No, that's true. It started off when I was sort of in my teens, I guess, sort of 14. I was given my little OM10, and that was the first real experience I had of shooting. But nothing really came of that at all in any way. And then after probably a couple of years of just fannying about with it, just didn't touch a camera again until about 2007, I want to say, maybe, yeah, around then, and just sort of decided that I wanted to pick it up again. Got myself a little, what was it? The Nikon D60. I mean,
oh yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we're talking high-end equipment here.
Yeah, the D60 is probably one of the best cameras that Nikon ever shouldn't have produced.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, but I didn't get the red one. I got the standard black one.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and
you don't want to be too fancy, right? You don't want to be too classy.
No, I mean not when you're spending that much money on a camera. There's no point. So that one with the kit lens, obviously, and then I picked up a 70-300 4.5 5.6 and just sort of went off and fannied about with that, I guess. Then from there, I moved on to the D300S and started thinking about doing it a bit more seriously. And I had a couple of friends ask me to do, you know, oh, my friend's got a camera, that kind of, you know, that thing.
Yeah.
And I think the first actual photograph I took in that vein was used in a full-page ad in some surf magazine or something, and that was kind of the beginning, and it sort of went on from there. And while I was working, doing what I did at that point in time, I was sort of doing odd little jobs on the side, and then I got picked up by Exeter Living, and that put me in front of a load of people, and yeah, it just kind of grew from there. Really, just sort of talking to people, shooting them, and sort of just building up kit and experience around what people were looking for. So yeah, it's just sort of grown, I guess, from that.
And you mentioned Exeter Living, so obviously that's kind of press things. What other bits and pieces you do? Do you have any sort of big clients that you work for?
Yeah, well, like I say, Exeter Living. From that, I ended up working for the Express and Echo, doing their freelance work at the weekends. Which again, all of these things put me in front of more and more people where I could say, "Hey, here's a business card." You know, I was throwing business cards at people like, I don't know,
A shit magician.
So that got me a lot of bits and pieces, and I tend to be doing a lot of corporate and commercial stuff now. I've got a couple of nice, regular clients. One of them is particularly well known in the UK, I would say. And then obviously TEDx as well, which is not paid, but it's a good thing to be involved with, and that puts me in front of even more people still. So yeah, I've got some good clients and some and it ticks me over quite nicely. And I dare say if I got my marketing together, I'd have even more clients.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? And I hear this so often from different photographers and, basically anybody that works as a freelancer, as a self-employed individual, is that it's not so much about the skill of what you are doing, but it is the skill.
Well, no, it's definitely not in my case.
But it's the skill of how you can market yourself to other people. And, you have the advantage that, you very much are, dare I say, the loudest person in the room quite often. And you're not afraid to go up to somebody and just go, "Oh, my name's Matt, I'm a photographer, here's a card." And I've seen you do it hundreds of times. But, yeah, I mean, what do you have anything that you want to weigh on how you would market differently as far as people are concerned, how you would market differently online? Or maybe some advice for somebody who's perhaps not as confident as going up to somebody and going, here's my business card, how you would get around that.
So the physical networking side of it, when I very first started doing that sort of thing, I was that person that wouldn't go up to someone and go, "Oh, please take my card, sir." But it's almost like you have a separate persona when it comes to those kind of things. You put yourself out there, you draw enough attention to yourself that people sort of want to talk to you, and then you can have conversations and say, "Look, I'm doing this now. Here you go, have a card if you ever need anything doing," and you just put yourself in front of people, and it is quite daunting at first. I mean, the first few events that I turned up to, where I was doing the classic grip and grin stuff, I barely, I literally would just go over to people and go, "So, excuse me, can I take your photo, please?" And, "Well, what's your name?" And now it's just like, you will do as I tell you. You will stand there, you will smile, you will grip your glass, hence like this, and I will photograph you. Then you will give me your name, and if you feel obliged, you can write it down. So you find your groove, and that's how it works for me a lot of the time. And then in terms of my online presence, which there is literally none. I mean, I'm crap when it comes to social media and keeping my website up to date. I just never do it. Two reasons being, one, I just cannot be bothered, and two, a lot of the images that I'm taking are corporate headshots and stuff like that. It's not really sensational images to share. So I'm kind of not very good at the whole online presence thing, and I see other photographers who write in pages and pages of blogs and get excited about shooting this new product and whatever, and they write about it, and that works for them. For me, it's more about talking to clients face to face, getting passed on. I mean, a lot of my more recent work has been referrals and word of mouth. So yeah, the online thing doesn't really work for me. Probably something I should do, but it doesn't really. It's not in keeping with how I do things.
Well, I mean, a lot of other people that I do speak to have made comments that when they do market themselves online, like Instagram doesn't yield anything pretty much. They get so few people through Instagram. They started advertising in kind of the equivalent of Exeter Living, which is I don't know how you describe Exeter Living. Is it a free magazine?
A lifestyle magazine.
It's a lifestyle magazine
with a recommended cover price.
With it's very egalitarian for you. How many times have they drilled that line into you?
No, that was me actually coming up with it on the spot.
You should definitely work in the marketing. But again, but you know, adverts in there didn't really yield very much. So, do you think that photography is almost kind of trapped in this bygone era of the only way to really get extra clients is to work through and do the word of mouth, do the referrals side of things? Or do you think that there is a kind of almost a formula for how you can market online successfully?
I don't know. Like I said, very, very few of my clients come through any kind of web activity. I get the occasional wedding inquiry because they've probably just gone onto Google, wedding photographer, Southwest, and because of my SEO, I've come up some way down the list, and they've just gone, click, I'll send off a message, see what comes back. So I don't think in terms of those kind of clients that it's driven to me. It's more luck than anything. You know, they've spammed out a load of messages. I might have been the first one to reply, and they've gone, yeah, great, we'll go with that. And then in terms of the business side of it, I think word of mouth does play a lot into it. LinkedIn is quite good for that. Because people will refer you on LinkedIn, or someone will, you know, these businesses, you've got someone who works for someone and they'll say, oh, we're looking for a photographer to do headshots. And then connections that I've got will go, oh, Matt round, whatever. And then I'll go in and spout my piece. But yeah, I think that's probably, in terms of business photography, I think, and you know, corporate and commercial, I think that you need to be in front of people. You need to attend these terribly annoying unpaid networking events sometimes in order that you can meet these people and make your impression upon them and go from there. If it works out, it works out. If not, go and do another one until you keep meeting people. You know, I've lost count of how many business cards I've given out over the years. It's probably thousands. And the return on that is not great, but if you're seen regularly enough, you tend to stick and people come to you. And then I've had referrals from various other businesses to private clients, and magazines to business clients, and newspapers to PR clients. So it kind of, yeah, it's a referral system is a very handy thing.
And I know that you have done, and you are continuing to doing quite a few personal projects, both photographically and non-photographically. The Tar Building, for example, the 4th Street book, and the project that's kind of fallen a little bit by the wayside at the moment, but the one that we're involved with, which is How I Got Here. Do you find, how do you manage the time between sort of the more personal projects and the paid work? Do you see the personal projects as, I need to get a return on investment on this, or is that purely just from the passion of photography?
Well, the 4th Street thing was kind of, that was in 2015 I shot that. So that was me using it as a reason to talk to local businesses, and ultimately it became, you know, the books became the most expensive business cards anyone could ever give out, I think. And I was fortunate in that where I didn't have to pay for the printing. That was funded, but I did have to pay for the exhibition, which was, I think that ended up costing me 1,500 odd quid on prints for that, and it didn't turn anything. It didn't make me any money. In fact, after the few sales of the book that there have been, I probably have not come anywhere near close to making 20% of my investment in it, but it has put me in front of a lot of people. It's the book, again, like I said, is quite a handy thing to give to future clients, to go like, yeah, I'll knock this book out, have a look, and they go through it and go, oh yeah, that's really good. It's not, it's crap. So that was quite handy. In terms of other personal projects, I don't really have any, other than the How I Got Here thing, obviously, which is just sitting doing nothing, came out of a need to find a personal project, because I think for me photography had very much become a means to an end. It was like, you turn up to work and you do your job. You don't necessarily, when you get home, want to do the same thing at home as you did at work, and so that's why largely when I'm shooting my own stuff, I shoot on analog, 35mm and 120, as opposed to shooting digital, because it's a different format to the same thing, which keeps it interesting. Because otherwise, I do find that actually it's sort of, I look at the camera and I'm like, just feel obligated to go and do something.
I suppose it is like that though, isn't it? Like, we always hear about these things. It's like, if you're working from home, you need to have a space away that's your working space, not your living space. And I suppose you do associate the camera with work, which, as much as you love it, and I know that you do, it can get very much like, oh my god, all right, here we go, here's another thing that we need to do. So yeah, I can appreciate that. Any other reasons you like shooting analog? This is mainly an analog podcast. I think we've mentioned digital cameras twice.
Dun, dun, dun. I like it. It's just clunky, and it's for me, it's a very tactile thing as well. Like, the sound of the machinery and the physicality of it. I love, and also shooting analog is a very, very good practice for making sure you're sorting your shit out before you don't rely on post so much. You tend to consider your frame a lot more acutely than you would with digital. You sort of meter things properly and consider your dynamic ranges a little bit more, I think, because you don't have that opportunity to chuck it in Lightroom and go, right, well, let's just chuck the shadows up and look, oh, you can see all the detail in the back. So yeah, I like the restrictions of it, and I also like the tactility of it. I think that's probably the best. And the cameras. I mean, the cameras are ugly as sin on the whole, but they're great boxes. They're a machine. It's great. Love it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We try not to talk about tech too much, but I think that both Jack and I can agree that there is definitely a combined passion for film cameras, and the analog system has always been something that's been absolutely incredible. Are you still there, Jack? You haven't actually said anything for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, no. I'm just it's just interesting listening. I've never ever been a commercial person. I've the commercial projects, or not the briefs that we had in uni were difficult for me, because I am that person that goes, oh, please take my business card, and so it's just interesting to listen and learn, really.
It, like I said, it is something that you have to take yourself out of the comfort zone and just go and do it. I mean, Ben knows me well enough to know that that's not my general persona 100% of the time. I'm not. I'm happy to sort of hide away a lot of the time if I have to. But when you're doing your job, you put your face on and you go, right, game time, and you just do it. You just, like I say, you fling out business cards like they're going out of fashion, and they are. But you just talk to people. You just and you find that also if you have those conversations, that you build a bit of a rapport, a bit more of a rapport before you've even gone in there to work with them. Which is quite handy in some ways, particularly if you're doing like staff headshots and things like that, and you want to keep it relaxed and whatever, and if they're at ease before you've even got to the job, you're halfway to winning the battle, really. So yeah, I'm a very, very strong advocate for getting out there and sucking it up and just doing a few networking events, and if you can do it as a photographer, even better. So.
Yeah, and I think it's quite important as well to, how they say 7 seconds is your first impression. I think that does make a very key difference, especially within photography. Like, I've had to see you work with people that aren't necessarily too happy with having their photo taken. And it's very interesting to see how you can quickly go from, oh, Mr. Loud, yeah, awesome, oh, fantastic, this is how it is, to, okay, let's take a minute, we're going to calm down, and be a little bit more chilled out and a little bit more, just a little, making them feel a little bit more at ease. And how, so with that in mind, do you think that it's, what do you think is more important, your actually ability to create a good image, or your ability to make the client feel at ease, to have the skills that you have where you can talk to people and make people aware of your presence?
I think it's probably a combination of the two things, depending on the scenario. I mean, in the networking thing, you just literally you put your camera in one set and you run around and press a button and talk to people. When it comes to doing, headshots and stuff like that, you still have to have the ability to take those photos. You still need to have the technical prowess in order to get it right, take the camera, and get it done. Because ultimately, if you've got someone who's in front of the camera and they're feeling uncomfortable and they want to get out of there, your best thing to do is to keep them at ease and get it done quickly. You don't want to be faffing about, changing up your lighting and sort of dialing in your aperture and whatever when you've got somebody sitting there in front of you waiting to have their photograph taken or whatever. So it is to have a good base technical ability is fundamental to it, and then your character does the rest. If you can have a laugh with someone, that immediately puts them at ease, and you end up getting much more natural photos when it comes, even like the corporate headshot ones. I don't tend to go for the whole look at me, boring. Widescreen. They're formulaic, but they're of a more relaxed nature. And if you look at some of the ones that I did for Aquamarine a couple of years ago, they were pretty much jovial images. There's nothing terribly formal about them, but I still had lighting set up for each subject. And while I'm doing one person, I'm chatting to somebody else over there, and sort of we're all interacting the whole time. And that's great if you've got people like that, but if you've got the more timid types, you can dial it down and you can go, okay, right, well, here's a few tips in order to help you feel more confident in front of the camera, with the various, like to stop the blinks, you get them to close their eyes and then open it and take that, the drill. So yeah, a good fundament of knowledge goes a long way, as well as, being a clown, I guess.
So let's talk about the actual making of the images then. I've seen you work, and as you've already alluded to, you are a very, very efficient photographer, to say the least. It's normally, a couple of photos, bash, that's it, you're done. are there ever situations where you do spend a little bit more time with a client, perhaps for the headshots? I have seen you work slower, but that has been more in the personal projects. So yeah, what do you think to that? Sort of the pace and the speed that you work, how that influences the job, how that influences the end result of the images as well.
Generally, when it comes to doing those kind of things, I would have had several sort of conversations with the client before even stepping foot in the building. I always like to take a notebook and pen with me to meetings before they even book me for the job. I'll go and give a consultation if you like, and I like to pretend to write things down in my book. As you've seen my handwriting, you know that I can't even read it by the time I've got home. But it's once you get a feel of what they're after, you can put yourself in the mindset for when you go in there, and you can take time over some of them, or you can get them done quickly. Generally, people like it done quickly because I charge by the hour, and I think that when you're doing things quicker, you tend to sort of fire them off, one click, 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 and then you go, right, okay, try that, click, 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 and you walk away. I think you probably walk away with more images than you would if you took your time over it, obviously, because there's a little bit of the spray and pray thing going on, but it's you still walk away with an image that they're happy with. Going back to my personal projects, like with the How I Got It thing, where I'm shooting everything on 35mm medium format, I am a lot more deliberate about the frames I take, as I mentioned earlier, because you tend to work to the limitations of the film that you're using, and that's all shot on FP4, which, as we know, is got that nice deep sort of contrast to it, and you do lose a lot of the dynamic range before you scan. So I do take more consideration over the lighting and over textures as well when I shoot in analog, and my analog photo shoots tend to be 3-4 times longer than shooting on the Evil D,
And I suppose that it's a different band as well with analog, that generally speaking, if you are shooting somebody on analog, they're not paying you to be there.
No, there's that.
So your time is their time. If it's less valuable, if that makes sense as well. So you do have.
I think the only commercial thing I've done on analog was that feature in Exit Living about the Jurassic Coast, and that was out of necessity, really. And it was just incredibly lucky that I had the F5 in my bag and a roll of colour film. I mean, it was.
Yes. Do you want to tell that story, or are we going to leave that for another day?
We'll glance over the fact that I dropped a couple of grand's worth of camera and put myself out of action, and then my spare body died on the day that I was out taking photographs of the coast.
Yes, absolutely.
I've got a question. I've got a question now.
Oh, hi, Jack.
Hello.
Oh, he's back. Hello.
With your commercial stuff, you said about the consultation and how you are a bit of there is a bit of a luck with the whole spraying and praying thing. You've obviously been doing it for a long time, but do you now have like a template in your head of the pictures you want before you even go into the room?
Yeah. I know how many lights I'm probably going to take with me. I know where they're going to be roughly, and I know which mods I'm going to use. And it's a fairly steadfast formula in that I use an 80mm octa for the face, and then I might have either a square or a bare light somewhere in the background just to pick up hair lights. If I'm doing large groups, I've now got the 120 octa, which will easily shoot 10 people. It's immense.
It's literally the size of the moon.
It is. I mean, if you wanted to do a moon photo, you just stick that down at the end of the garden and take a pop and then just round out the corners on it in post. So yeah, I've kind of, there is quite a distinct formula to how I take the photographs. I know how I'm going to have them seated before I get in the building. I know where they're going to be for most of them, and I know what lighting rig I'm going to need. And then in terms of glass, I generally do it on 70 to 200, and that's that, bish bosh bash, maybe 85 sometimes, but it's very easy. It's very formulaic when it comes to headshots. You can get a bit more adventurous, but like I have done with some clients where it's a bit more sort of relaxed, but ultimately you're providing them with the images that they want, and they want to see, a nicely lit face with standard-ish lighting. It's very formulaic, which makes your job a lot easier too, because once you've done one, you've done them all.
You know it. So another question that I do have, and you'll know that this podcast is, our target audience is sort of the A-level / degree photographer, the still student perhaps studying through. And when you're doing that, you do, most courses will have what's called like a professional module or like a professional futures, where you are encouraged to go out and create work and gain clients that way. In fact, that's actually how we met, was on a professional module shoot that I did. The problem that a lot of people then have is transitioning that kind of unpaid work into it being their full-time jobs, if that's what they want to do, sort of being that full-time photographer. Do you have any advice or tips on how you can make that transition run smoother, how it can be more efficient?
Well, for me, it's not. It's been quite a slow process, but I think that's also down to my distinctly crap ability at marketing. But I think you need to go into it and know that you're going to be doing a lot of grunt work, and you do the grunt work, and you do the stuff that you don't want to do, and you get the little paid jobs, and you do the, dare I say it, you do the occasional freebie. I shouldn't really say that, but you do it to get yourself out there. And all you can do is just keep chipping away, unless you're incredibly fortunate and you get picked up by someone straight away, or you happen to go and work for a publishing house or another photographer firm or something like that. To do it from scratch by yourself is work. It's not glamour. It's not, oh, I've got a nice new camera and I can go and photograph people and they'll love me and they'll pay me and they'll adore me. It's not that. It's hard work. You've got to swallow your pride. You've got to take some knocks, and you've just got to get out there and really set your mind to it. It's not easy. Nothing particularly like freelancing in a digital age is not easy. Newspapers have absolutely died, so that's pretty much going. I mean, nearly every newspaper company or publishing house, whatever, are cutting back on their staff. They're photojournalists are a thing of the past. You don't need to send someone out to take a photograph unless it's of important things. But your general day-to-day news stuff, people with these in their pockets, provide those images, and
no one can
it
see
costs. It costs the printers nothing, and it's all online anyway, so they're not even So, I think what's the going rate at the moment for local press photography in news is £30 per job. Okay, that's not an hour, that's per job. I had someone ask me, Archon, in fact, I'm not going to help pull any punches. They asked me to do a job that would have taken 5 or 6 hours probably for £30. I politely declined. So yeah, don't think that going off and you're not going to be the next Kevin Carter anytime soon, because there's no situations like that, and everybody else is there taking photos anyway.
So that kind of leads me quite nicely onto the next question, which is to do with pricing. And this is another uh, big thing that people struggle with. I'm not going to ask you like what your rates are or anything like that, but very
It's just turning into a giant advert.
yeah, it literally is, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, I've got a few friends that have sort of made that jump. It's like, oh, I am now getting regular clients. Okay, this is good. This is turning into something. And the question that I get approximately once a week is, what should I be charging for this? And what advice would you give as far as, choosing that pricing structure? Because I know it is very geographic. If you're working in London, it's going to be 4 times as much as if you're working in, I don't know, say up north somewhere. That's just because of the economy of things and the economy of scale. So what would you recommend looking at other photographers that are currently working, just going, okay, this is an average price and going from there?
You could do that, but if you can find another photographer's pricing structure anywhere on their website, please point me in their direction, because there are guidelines. The AOP, I think, have guidelines on pricing. As I'm not a member, I don't know what those are. So I generally work it on how much I think that my time is worth. And I do kind of, depending on the client as well, I'll gear it towards what I think is fair for them. If I'm shooting for a very small business or a charity or whatever, obviously my rate is not going to be as high as when I'm shooting for financial institutions, let's say. But you also have to take into account your overheads. So if you're running a website, that's an overhead. If you're running a vehicle, that's definitely an overhead. I mean, that's a lot of overheads. That's wear and tear, that's tax, that's petrol, all of that stuff. Your equipment, you have to take into account dilapidations, how much money you've spent on that kit initially to get you to that position.
When you drop it.
Yeah. Yeah, insurance. That's something I recommend. Forget your website. Just go and talk to people and make sure you've got good insurance. Yeah. So you need to work out what you think you should earn, and then probably add another 50% to that, and then probably add another 50% to that when you make a quote, and then they can talk you down if they want to. It's very rare that I've had it once where someone has complained about the price, and I've said, well, you've had me for a day, and I've shot all of these images for you, and this was the terms that we agreed. It's not my fault that you've made it, because it's not my fault that it's gone on as long as it has, let's say. So it is. There's a sort of benchmark that you can do. Some people charge by the hour, and that's it. They go, right, this is it. I'll do 2 hours for you at X amount an hour. Some people charge by the day, and by the half day, I charge for all of the above. And then I think that's the easiest way of going about it, is to just imagine how much time and effort you put into something. So I like doing commercial work because the post in digital is done exceptionally quickly. I'm not rattling off a few hundred photographs and then going back and having to slog over them. Everything's controlled. Hit one button, all of them are edited. You send it out. You've saved yourself loads of time. Weddings and things like that are a completely different story. I mean, what's the average price for a wedding photographer now? $1,500 for the day?
About that, yeah. Right.
That's not just for the day. That's not for you to be there with a camera and run around taking photographs of people. That's the days of editing afterwards as well, in some cases. So you have to imagine that your time goes beyond the time of the shoot, if you will. So that's another factor to consider, I think. But yeah, just charge more than 30 quid per job, and don't do any press work, I think is the best thing to take away from this. a good base rate is probably at least £1 a minute, I would say. That will get you started. If anybody quibble it, say go to someone else. And that's the other thing as well. People will try and talk you down. You will give them a quote and they will be like, oh, it's too much. This person will do it for that much. Don't ever be scared to say, all right, go to them then. Because generally, I would say 90% of the time, they're
calling a bluff.
Yeah. And you just go, all right, go for it. And they will back down. So don't be scared to hold your ground. If you believe that's what you're worth, go for it. Yeah. You know, put a little bit of wiggle room in there in your head and don't go beyond it. Otherwise, you will get cut down. So, yeah.
Awesome. Brilliant. Well, those are all of the questions that I've got. Jack, anything?
Jack's gone, mate. He's not even here.
Yeah, he's just us two now.
He's zoned out.
His Wi-Fi's gone like hours ago.
Ages ago. No, I was gonna say something about weddings and how you approach them in differently to, say, approaching an event. Is it the same approach as in like a consultation and you sort of talk with them, see what they want, or do you go more with what you see around you? Because obviously you can't really prepare as much for that as an event, for instance. So how do you sort of go into a wedding without having that sort of template in your head?
There's still kind of a template. You still... Generally, people want the candid shots during the ceremony and people, milling and all of that beforehand. Bride arrival, ceremony shots, the kiss, that is the most important bit. And the walking down the aisle. So you just go in, you do your bits, you position yourself where you can get both bride and groom faces when they're doing their thing. And then as you get near to the end of the ceremony, you duck out, go down the back of the aisle and wait. And you spend a lot of time running around. But there's still a pretty set sort of formula to it. If you know how to use your camera, you're laughing. If you know that when you go inside, you're going to have to crank your ISO up above 3200 or whatever, you're laughing.
And then convert all the photos to black and white.
Yeah. Yes, exactly that. That's why black and white photography still exists in a digital age. It's to hide sins. And then you've got your usual, the usual group photos of the various families and all that. So you kind of, you know what you're going into. You will sit and talk with those clients, usually 2 or 3 times beforehand. I generally try to speak to wedding clients at least twice. Leading up to the wedding, and
just in case they change their mind.
Yeah, because I've had people where they say they only want on initial consultation. They say, "Oh yeah, we only want this and this. We don't want any formal shots, or we don't want you to stay past this time or whatever." And then 3 months before the ceremony, they've changed their mind, and they're like, "All right, well, we do want all the formal shots. We do want you to be there until the first dance or whatever," and you can sort of you then are more prepared. And with weddings, that's probably 90% of the thing is just, well, any shoot really is just being bloody prepared for it. When it comes to doing formals, if I'm in an area where I can set up a light, I'll have that set up before the ceremony, so that all I've got to do is run over, grab the light stand, chuck it where I want it, and pop away. Also, if it's a location I've not really been to before, I will go and have a quick look around a couple of days beforehand, or sometime beforehand, just so I can get a rough idea of nice little areas to do various shots. So it's still very similar. You providing you talk to people and you get the information from them, you can give them a product that they're going to be happy with. Well, I hope.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, generally.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Awesome stuff. Well, I think we'll have to call it about there. But Matt, it's been incredibly informative. thank you so much for coming on. It's been really, really enjoyable, and I'm sure that a lot of people are gonna get quite a lot of wisdom from this as well.
I highly doubt that.
No, definitely, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Where can we find you, Matt?
Here's your marketing.
Whereabouts are you?
This is your
Here's the
marketing
marketing
bit.
gone.
Yeah, so website, Instagram, Facebook. Those are the main ones. LinkedIn as well, just Matt Round Photography. Will take you to all. If you Google that, I should come up as the first.
There aren't many Matt Round photographies, are
There's
there?
one in Australia, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there is. MattRoundPhotography.com.
It's brilliant. What about yourself, Jack? Where can we find you?
You can find me at Jack Henderson Photo. And you, Ben?
You can find me at Ben Bullman Photo. And where can we find the podcast?
At the Mediocre Photo.
Mediocre Photo. Awesome. Well, if you like the video, like it. If you really liked it, subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your bank holiday Monday.
Cheers.